Welcome, seekers of hidden knowledge, to the mystical realm of the occult. Delve into the secrets of the universe as we journey together into the enigmatic world of ancient wisdom. Brought to you by your guide through the shadows of enlightenment, Wisdom Rocker. Uncover the mysteries, unlock the power, and journey with us as we explore the hidden depths within the pages of forgotten scrolls and ancient texts. Prepare to embark on a journey beyond the ordinary, where wisdom transcends time and knowledge is your greatest ally. Welcome to Wisdom Rocker. Prepare to awaken your inner sage. In this video, we will be uncovering the wisdom within the chapters of
The Theosophical Seal, a study for the student and the non-student, by Arthur M. Kuhn, with an introduction by James S. Perkins. This book is dedicated to all searchers for wisdom. 1958. Introduction. I am happy to introduce this present volume, the contents of which originally appeared as a series of articles in the American Theosophist. Mr. Arthur Kuhn's careful analysis of the Theosophical Seal is highly recommended to the many readers who will find here a rich store of information concerning the meaning of the various components of the seal. Symbology is one of the ancient keys unlocking the mysteries of man and nature. H.P. Blavatsky in The Secret Doctrine refers again and again to the hidden meanings revealed in symbol to the one who possesses the keys of understanding. From time immemorial, man has set his mark upon his work that thereby he might be known through his artifacts. Always that mark has revealed the person who made it, their nature, their uniqueness, and their striving after distant goals. Nations, too, have adopted marks symbolic of their purpose and destiny. And however unnoticed or misunderstood they may be, the symbols remain as reminders of veiled truth to those who can see. The human being is always subject to the intimations of its divinity, and by signs and symbols it both seeks to express its perceptions of its inner realities and is awakened to them by the outer symbols. Modern psychology is making respectable, as well as valid, these inner promptings. Symbology is again becoming acceptable as a legitimate means for interpreting the true nature of things. For a symbol, whether expressed in someone's dream, or as a trademark of a brand of soap, whether it be the great seal of a nation, or a form expressing the creation of a universe, is the visible representation of a reality, be it objective and external, or subjective and belonging to an inner realm of verities. To members of the Theosophical Society, as well as to countless non-members, the Theosophical Seal with its motto, "There is no religion higher than truth," is everywhere evidence of the Society's existence. It is a distinguishing badge representative of the character of the Theosophical Society. More than just a distinguishing mark. The seal symbolizes the truths of the ancient wisdom which the Theosophical movement was designed to promulgate in the modern world, and something of the mission and high destiny of the Society in the pure transmission of those truths. To those students who wish to probe more deeply into the symbolism of the seal, this book will furnish a valuable guide. For the first time in our literature, material has been brought together in a single work to trace the scattered threads of meaning that lie behind all of the elements of the seal. Mr. Kuhn's scholarship is thorough and painstaking, his analysis perceptive. In launching this volume, it is hoped that a more profound understanding of the seal and of the living reality which it represents will be engendered in those who enter into its study. James S. Perkins. Preface. It is usually accepted that the first requisite in writing is a thorough knowledge of the subject. Indeed, most experts on the art of writing hold that knowledge of the subject is a must in the list of a writer's qualifications. He is certainly expected to speak with authority. However, upon the completion of this series of studies on the subject of symbolism, I can make no such claim. I am somewhat in the position of a student of plant life who goes to a strange forest in search of rare floral specimens. He may wander around, apparently aimlessly, stopping here and there to dig, to examine, to photograph. He may even get lost until the end of the day forces him to gather up his implements, his notebook and sketches, and go home. He looks over the result of his labors with misgivings. What more beautiful specimens has he missed? Why hadn't he taken other directions, other paths? Of all the volumes that have been written, or are yet to be written, on the subject of symbolism, one must choose his material, take his own particular path, and find his own particular specimens. Many will be missed, and even those which he finds must bear the stamp of his own examination and his own point of view. He has no difficulty in finding or gathering enough material. His difficulty seems to be in trying to label or classify the maze of symbols which he finds everywhere. Take other branches of research, history, science, travel. These may be catalogued and classified under many headings. When he tries to use this method on symbolism to tag symbols as to type, to pigeonhole them as to meanings, to catalog their sources, he enters a field difficult for the mind to follow. The reason for this is probably due to the fact that symbolism, like mysticism, deals with things intangible and elusive, and which therefore seem to the mind to border upon unreality. The mind likes to deal with things and facts. Of course, there are certain broad classifications of symbols such as allegory, fable, myth, sign, figure, etc., but none of these seems to fit my purpose. The tendency is always strong to make an outline and fit the material into it. There is always something satisfying about an index and a sense of accomplishment. You get the feeling that, having made up a list of topics, your job is practically done. There is a feeling of security too, for if you stay on your predetermined plan like a path through the woods, you are sure not to get lost. And yet this security, as in most fields of accomplishment, is the price of freedom. An outline can become a kind of fence or wall keeping out other ideas which may try to get in. It can also serve the purpose of keeping your own imagination from getting out. While if you keep on the path you will not get lost, you will surely miss a lot of things. So, aside from certain general headings which serve more as guideposts than as an outline, these studies follow a rather winding path. I began my search through all available literature on the subject, reluctantly resisting the temptation to roam all over the field. Endless sorting, classifying, cutting, rewriting again and again resolved the material into some sequence of titles and subtitles. The question which comes first to mind is, what is a symbol? A homemade definition might read a sign, mark, figure, picture, or story which brings or suggests to the mind some fact or idea other than that which appears. Webster puts this thought more concisely, that which suggests something else by reason of relationship, association, convention, etc. This definition allows wide latitude. 1,000 people might look at the same object, and each would be reminded of something utterly different. It is as if the object were a lodestone that drew forth a mental image out of the well of each person's past experience. Take any object, a tree, for instance. The sight of a tree may invoke as many mental pictures as there are observers: a picnic in the park, Christmas morning with the children, the old homestead, a landmark, the lumber camp or the old sawmill, a nest of birds, the Garden of Eden, the family tree and the human race, ad infinitum. Besides the many types, sizes and species of trees, the idea tree becomes a composite symbol embracing or calling up endless mental images. This is a characteristic significant, as we shall see many times, of all symbols. Discoursing upon the subject of symbolism, Manly P. Hall writes, "A symbol always means what we think it means, and again, symbols change their meanings according to the level of intelligence upon which the interpreter functions. In a sense, we are living in a world of symbols. Everything around us is a visible manifestation of an idea which has its true home in another world. It is often difficult to draw a line between the symbol and the non-symbol. The ordinary things about us may seem real and permanent, or as changing and shifting reflections of inner and permanent realities." Quoting again from Mr. Hall's book, "When the mind comes instinctively to regard forms as the outer garments of realities, great strides have been taken in the rationalization of the entire nature. Man begins to know, as soon as he divests himself of the illusion that the universe is material and matter, the divine reality. And again, by studying symbols, men learn about themselves, for they read into the figures their own hopes and aspirations, their own concepts of universal order, their own understanding of divine agency. Life itself is a symbol, and each must interpret it according to the convictions of his own soul." How easily the contemplation of symbols draws us into realms of metaphysical speculation quite outside of our normal mode of thinking. Somewhere I came across this succinct statement: symbols are windows through which the mind looks into other worlds of reality. Manly Hall adds the touch of beauty to this thought. "Symbols," he says, "are keyholes to doors in the walls of space, and through them men peer into eternity. But to get back to particulars, consider for a moment the realm of music. We casually think of music as something which we hear, yet it has its symbols, a human invention to be sure, whereby music may be written upon pages and preserved for others to reproduce. It has its own alphabet of symbols, notes, clefs, bars, sharps, flats, accents, etc., universally accepted as the language of music. A composer, with his ear attuned to a realm that may be thought of as the natural home of pure music, hears a symphony. He transfers what he hears onto paper by means of these symbols. An artist reads these symbols, and with his trained eye and fingers or voice, under the impulse of an imagination, interprets these markings, recreating the original inspiration, its tone and tempo, its melody and harmony. This brings me to the conclusion, which must be obvious the more we think about it, that there are two general classifications of symbols. One class, by far the most easily recognized, are those invented by man himself for the purpose of more quickly or more economically conveying his thoughts to others. These are about us everywhere and occupy so common a place in our intellectual lives that we take them for granted. Language itself, written or spoken, is made up of symbols. The first primitive characters were copied from nature: birds, animals, rivers, trees, etc., carved upon rocks or temple walls depict a crude epic in tribal or national history. In the entire animal kingdom, this articulate use of symbols is peculiar to man alone, coming into being with the advent of the mental faculty in the early dawn of the human race. The origin and derivation of words has become a specialized field of research. Some etymologists assert that the letters of certain alphabets, notably the ancient Egyptian, Hebraic, and Hellenic, were shaped, both as to form and sound, to express certain ideas or concepts. For example, the sound of the letter A is made by the outgoing breath and therefore signifies power. Its written form is said to represent the bull and thus represents strength. The literature upon the origins of letters, words, and languages is most intriguing, and the quest for clues reads like a detective mystery. We could recall endless examples of this first class of symbols. Science, for instance, in its many ramifications, has invented an intricate system of codes and figures to represent its measurements and formulas. Mathematics is an easy illustration of the use of these signs. How elaborate would it be to express a problem if one had to write it out all in words? Physics, chemistry, astronomy, etc., each has a sign language of its own, without which it would require long and tedious explanations to convey the thought expressed in a single character. Characteristic of these sign symbols is that they have been invented by man to convey an exact meaning which has been predetermined. One may interpret the result of a formula or an equation, but not the intent of that sign by which the result is attained. An exception to this general principle might be found in the signs used in astronomy to designate the planets and certain of the constellations, or houses of the zodiac. This may be accounted for by the fact that the science of astronomy is a foster child to the more ancient science of astrology, and of course it inherited its ancient symbols. These signs, coming from antiquity, possess the characteristics of those symbols, which we shall place in our second classification, that is, they seem to be endowed with certain significant qualities inherent in their very shapes and their positions and arrangements in relation to one another. These signs are made up of lines, angles, curves, and circles so arranged as to give the essential value or idea of each figure its particular and significant meaning by reason of this arrangement. Let me illustrate what I mean. The point would be thought of as origin, source, or spirit. The circle would represent the field of manifestation in time and space. What then would be more natural than that the point within the circle should represent the sun source and origin of life within our solar system? The cross, in contrast to the circle, signifies the purely material side of nature and is therefore associated with the human body and materialistic qualities. When, therefore, the cross above the circle is made to designate our own Earth, we read into that sign the idea that on our planet material considerations overshadow the spiritual. The same sign in reverse circle above cross is used to designate the planet Venus, and would suggest the idea of spiritual values predominant. Astrologers from antiquity have pointed to Venus as the beneficent and friendly planet. The arc, or segment of a circle, is assigned to the moon. It may be thought that this figure had its inception in the crescent shape of the quarters of the moon itself. Undoubtedly, those who assigned the arc as the symbol of the moon had in mind its reflective quality, for, as their astrologers claimed, the peculiar quality of the moon is to reflect or accentuate whatever planetary or stellar influence it may transit. Significantly, while the sun signifies the spirit of man, the moon is associated with his soul or psyche. During the last half-century, a number of books have been written using mathematics and geometric figures to interpret the universe from the point of view of its inner sources and laws. Prominent among these were two books by Claude Bragdon, a modern Neoplatonist, who used these figures in a maze of patterns and designs to illustrate a philosophy of idealism. He wrote Four-Dimensional Vistas and A Primer of Higher Space, following Hinton's and Ouspensky's works on higher dimensional space and its relationship to life. Lines, angles, and curves, forming every conceivable geometric pattern in complex combinations and arrangements, are designed to show that the outer world of nature and the inner world of spirit are intimately and intricately interrelated. This interrelationship between the inner and the outer, the noumenon, and the phenomena finds its expression through geometric figures. They have called it a new symbology of the spiritual life. The idea behind this form of expression is that invisible forces, including thought and emotion, produce vibrations in the rarer media which surrounds us and which may be caught or fixed, so to speak, in a particular series of geometric figures. Music, the most ethereal or fluid of the arts, might thus be compressed or frozen within a composite figure made up of cubes, globes, tetrahedrons, pentahedrons, etc., in fantastic arrangements. The term architecture as frozen music became a popular expression. This term really originated a century earlier by the German Neoplatonic philosopher Friedrich von Schelling. The idea of interpreting the universe and life in terms of mathematics has been taken up by modern philosophers, with the benefit of the advanced science of physics and forms an approach to the subject that has a close tie-in with science itself. Manly P. Hall, in his Symbolism, the Universal Language, makes some interesting observations on the meanings of lines, curves, angles, etc. Writing about caricatures, he shows that every phase and degree of human emotions and character may be portrayed by the correct usage of lines. By the convex, concave, or angular lines, little idiosyncrasies of character may be emphasized out of their normal proportions, depicting personal traits otherwise unsuspected. As every artist knows, lines horizontal, vertical, oblique, convex, and concave as applied to the human face and figure tell a story beyond the power of words. Today this art has a universal appeal through the medium of the cartoon. Satire and criticism, through the art of suggestion, become by far more potent than direct statement and avoid the danger of incrimination. The language of lines may be summarized briefly. Straight lines and angles denote strength, and are therefore masculine. Curved lines and arcs express beauty and suggest the feminine. Symbolism plays an important part in the world's great literature, particularly Oriental literature. Myth, allegory, parable, and glyph are universally recognized techniques in portraying and preserving spiritual or philosophic truths. Some of the most profoundly beautiful literature the world has ever known, written thousands of years before the Christian era, comes to us from India, cradle of the ancient Aryan race. The Puranas, Upanishads, and Gita contain not only the supreme laws of the spiritual life and rules for attaining union with God, but also the story of cosmogenesis, of the creation and evolution of the universe and of man. All of this is told in epic form using allegory and myth. In what better way could the sublimity of these truths have been preserved over the thousands of years of the infancy of the human race? Our own Bible is an outstanding example. Serious and sincere students agree that many of the stories of the Bible are meaningless, not to say fantastic, unless interpreted in the light of symbolism. The serpent and the Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark, Jonah in the whale's belly, Joshua and the walls of Jericho, to mention a few which everyone knows. To translate these remarkable stories as history is to miss completely the profound truths so thinly veiled. Symbolically, we may read in them the pilgrimage of the human soul through its rounds of manifestation, the cosmogenesis of life and form in our solar system, the way of perfection and the eventual reunion of man with God. The greatest tragedy of Christendom is the blunder of the Western world in having read its sacred scriptures only as history or geography. It seems most appropriate to insert here another quotation from Manly Hall. Symbols are formulated to clarify truths which in their abstract form are incomprehensible. Idolatry consists in the inability of the mind to differentiate between the symbol and the abstract principle for which it stands. A moment ago I separated symbols into two classes: those which were human-invented, and those which seem to contain within themselves certain intrinsic values. It is to the latter that we shall now direct our attention, because it is of these that the Theosophical Seal is composed. These are the symbols made up of certain fundamental geometric figures such as the point, the line, the triangle, the square or cross, the circle, and of course their three-dimensional counterparts, the cube, the sphere, the tetrahedron, etc. Forms and shapes which came into existence coincident with the appearance of a universe. For this reason we may call them universal. It is said that God geometrizes. That must mean that in the creating of his universe all forms of life, from rock crystals, plant structures and animal prototypes, have been built upon or evolved along definite geometric patterns. Science has of course confirmed this idea in its discoveries of the geometric structure of the cell, the molecule, and the atom. These elemental geometric figures have sometimes been referred to as the playthings of the gods. We may rightly call them a divine alphabet, for it is their infinite variations and combinations which make up the pattern of creation and by which creation may be interpreted. But who can say what these figures really mean? The point, the line, the circle, the square, and so on. They seem to be as eternal as spirit itself. By what authority do we presume to interpret their ultimate significance? In attempting to attribute definite meanings to them, we feel that we are treading upon holy ground, yet somehow instinctively we feel that each of these figures, taken separately, represents its own specific idea and is the instrument for a distinctive type of force. I realize that in saying this I seem to be stepping over into another world. It is equivalent to saying that these figures are the objectification, or crystallization in matter, of ultimate ideas. If that is so, their many combinations must conceal a wisdom that may rightly be called divine. and it is to the search for this wisdom that this volume is dedicated. When we look upon the things about us, we normally consider them in their relationship to ourselves. Our outlook upon life may be called egocentric. We are in the center of our own world and everything rotates about us. Our method of gaining knowledge of things is analytical, that is, we pick them to pieces to find out what they are made of and what makes them tick. In the study of symbols, a new method seems to be called forth. We step out of ourselves into a world which is universal. Instead of examining these symbols as we would objects in a laboratory under a microscope, we seem to identify ourselves with them and, if we may use the term, absorb their hidden wisdom. We have been so used to reasoning things out. Our new approach must be subjective rather than objective, as if these things were part of us, instead of outside. We seem now to need a new faculty, the faculty of intuition, for this new language is indeed the language of the gods. I have frequently been asked, where can I find a book which tells me all about these symbols? I wish I knew. I am still looking for that book. There are many volumes which contain mines of information, but these mines have to be worked with pick and shovel. The Theosophical Society, in its brief history, has produced a vast field of literature embracing science, philosophy, and religion, as well as mysticism and occultism. The Secret Doctrine by Madame H.P. Blavatsky is an almost inexhaustible source. Besides the Theosophical Society, there are other contemporary movements which emphasize some particular phase of this universal teaching: the Christian mystics, the Rosicrucian Fellowship, the Masonic Order, to name only a few. I have tried to express my gratitude to these many sources in my acknowledgments. May I share a secret? A few moments ago I hinted that a sustained and persistent thought about an idea may sometimes act as a kind of magnet which calls forth, as from the well of our own subconscious nature, information long since forgotten. It may even attract to itself kindred thoughts, as from some universal mental reservoir. Such concentration of attention often leads, by devious paths perhaps, to the source where such information may be found. Often to dream about a question with sufficient patience and endurance will call to mind the title of a book, an exact page, or even a quotation which will suggest the desired answer. However, I am not at all suggesting that such dreaming takes the place of persistent digging. One more thought. While acknowledging my gratitude and indebtedness to the many sources of information and to the teachings of Theosophy, I wish to emphasize the fact that certain of the interpretations based upon this information are my own. It should be made clear that the thoughts expressed in the following studies do not necessarily reflect the teachings of the Theosophical Society, except for the fact that Theosophy is a compilation of many teachings gathered from sources both ancient and modern, and that acceptance of any of its teachings is not a prerequisite to membership. My one objective in the writing of these studies has been to avoid vagueness and ambiguity, and so far as possible to strive for clarity and definiteness. Yet in this, there is the real danger of seeming to be dogmatic. These symbols belong to the eternal, and while our thinking about them may be clear, it should not be fixed. We may be definite, but not final. This book should not be looked upon as a textbook, in the ordinary accepted meaning of the term. Students may, and I hope will, follow me in their search for hidden meanings and new interpretations. The following pages have, as they say, only scratched the surface. At all times I have tried to take the reader with me in my searching so that we may search together. In so doing, I believe that we shall each feel the thrill of discovery and find new windows of understanding opening before our minds. I believe, too, that there is a far greater power in suggestion than in a definite statement of fact, for thereby each searcher feels that he or she is opening up their own window upon a realm where ideas seem real and infinitely more exciting than are their shadows in the world of things. The Theosophical Seal may thus become for each such a window through which they may, from time to time, catch glimpses of that Theosophia, that divine wisdom which, as the psalmist wrote, mightily and sweetly ordereth all things. A.M.C.
Thanks for watching the Wisdom Rocker. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.